Hello, my name is Osha. I like talking about American presidents. I'm continuing with my discussion on the application of the Fourth and 14th Amendment to a malicious prosecution uh, under 42 USC Section 1983, uh, and also a deprivation of rights and color of law violations under 18 USC sections 241 and 242. You don't have to worry about the details of those sections, but they pretty much protects our rights, right, and due process. So it prohibits malicious prosecution, and that's malicious prosecution by the state, by a government actor. It also prohibits the deprivation of our rights, right? It protects our constitutional rights, and it makes sure that there's no color of law violation. Color of law violation is when a a representative of the government, an officer of the government, is violating your rights, your constitutional rights, but because of their authority, their apparent authority, they're claiming that because of their authority, that they're depriving you of your rights. They're committing this crime against you and against our constitution because of their office, the office they hold, whether it's a police officer or or a judge. In this case today, I'm going to be talking about perjury, right? When a police officer committed perjury, and again, I want to apply them to everyday experience because malicious prosecution is not something that's academic. It's a reality for many Black American men, for many Black men. This is what I'm facing in Montgomery County, Maryland. And even though I'm an innocent person, I'm a law-abiding person. I've done videos about how the police came to my apartment on May 16, 2023, under swatting. They participated in a conspiracy to violate my civil rights, and under a hoax was done with rogue agents of the Navy that I had reported for fraud. And of course, they suborned a man called Jide Warire, who impersonated himself, misrepresented himself as my uncle. And he also committed perjury on an emergency evaluation petition that I had knew nothing about. And they also suborned a neighbor of mine who had assaulted me with Jide Warire. So I guess they had used several mechanisms, several methods that failed to try to get me removed from my apartment and wrongfully committed, right? So he used a neighbor of mine, he was like a provocateur, an agent provocateur, a Shumi. And once I'd been removed from my apartment, he also committed perjury under oath, lying that I had kidnapped him on May 14, 2023, represented myself as a cop, as law enforcement, twisted his arm, threw him into my apartment, seized his phone, and he ran away. Meanwhile, I wasn't charged for kidnapping. It's been over 3 years. It's been almost 3 years now, right? It happened in 2023, ostensibly, but right. Um, but allegedly, sorry. But I wasn't charged for kidnapping. I wasn't charged for armed robbery, for theft. I wasn't charged for any of those things. But those are parts because there were clearly instances of perjury. So Shumi committed perjury. Everything he wrote in the peace order was a fabrication. I've since reported it to a judge in Montgomery County, Maryland, and to the state attorney's office. So they know under the Brady doctrine, the Brady rule, I should have been exonerated because I have exculpatory evidence, right? So that's part of why this is a malicious bad faith prosecution. But enough said, I want to just show the significance of the Fourth Amendment I've been reading. Let me read the Fourth Amendment again. I'm going to apply it to my particular case, so I can do it for myself. I think you can do it for yourself, as individuals, as American citizens as well. By the way, remember the Bill of Rights, they're not only applicable to US citizens, they're applicable to anybody, legal or illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, um, who are under the jurisdiction of the United States government. So, the Fourth Amendment and 14th Amendment, they apply to non-US citizens as well. So, the Fourth Amendment, part of the Bill of Rights given to us by our fourth president, James Madison, right, protects us against the overreach and abuses of the government. So it protects our liberties. So Fourth Amendment, and it normally, people normally think it applies just to the physical location, our homes. So in this case, I was in my home, so there was no arrest warrant by the police. They didn't give me notice, so they violated my rights within my home because I was in my home. This was May 16, 2023. When they came, they had no arrest warrant. So they came on pretext, various pretexts. And, they, they would subsequently lie, and I'll describe the perjury they committed when they lied that they actually came to deliver an emergency evaluation petition by Jide Iwari, which he committed perjury on as well, which I was unaware of, right? So they didn't give me any notice. But in any event, let me now describe what the Fourth Amendment is, and I'm going to show you the significance. Today, I'm going to be focusing on oaths and affirmations because that's what deals with perjury, right? So the Fourth Amendment says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oaths or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and persons or things to be seized. So that's the Fourth Amendment. So perjury, so the oaths and affirmations, that deals with perjury. And I'm going to go into these elements of perjury later on, because you see, you're taking an oath in court. And so they're saying, the Fourth Amendment is saying that, well, there's, a judge can't issue a warrant. You can't get a warrant because it's a judge or a commissioner representative of the state that can issue an arrest warrant or a search warrant. And they're saying you can't get that warrant to go and violate the rights of an American citizen, of someone, right, who's just in their home, right? They're not committing any crime. You can't get that unless you the officer who's seeking or the police officer, the agent seeking that oath, that warrant, sorry, he has to take an oath, swearing, right, and showing probable cause. So that he has to write a statement that shows probable cause, and it's supposed to be in his oath or affirmations or an affidavit, that he's providing to a judge, a neutral judge. So, and what protects me? The 14th Amendment. So I'm going to just remind us of what the 14th Amendment is. That's a due process clause and the equal protection. So you see, these things, they often work together. It's like they're not just discrete, they're not just tangential or staying on their own. They actually, there's an interplay, right? Interconnectedness, and you have to see how they work together. So I'm protected, I'm in my home, I'm protected by the 14th Amendment, not just in my home, right? So the equal protection of the law part, that says I can't just be singled out and targeted, right? The police can't just come to my home. They're coming to my home, they have to go to everybody's home as well, unless they have a warrant, and it has to be specific, you see, particular, right? Why is it that they're coming to me? Probable cause. Remember, I discussed what probable cause is, and remind us of what probable cause is again. The essential elements, right? I said there's 6 elements that I like from the definition of probable cause that we got from Brinegar versus United States of 1949, and it goes where the facts and circumstances within the officer's knowledge with reasonably trustworthy information sufficient to warrant a belief by a man of reasonable caution that a crime is being committed. So that's probable cause. Let me repeat that because it wasn't smooth. Where the facts and circumstances within the officer's knowledge with reasonably trustworthy information sufficient to warrant a belief by a man of reasonable caution that a crime is being committed. So that's probable cause, right? Uh, that standard is not met, right? I'm in my home, right? So there's ostensibly supposed to be some kind of hearsay. My neighbor is supposed to have called them. That's a 911, the same man who had attacked me on May 14. And I told the police, right? And my friend told the police. My friend has a sworn statement. She's talked to the state attorney because she spoke to the police that, hey, I told her, she was on the phone, that my neighbor had just assaulted me, right? And you have to look to the reliability of the person giving that information, right? As of that day, I was holding a top secret TSSCI clearance, right? And I was an auditor in the Department of the Navy. I'd never committed a crime. I had a law degree. So you can see the reason why they try to focus on, they try to lie that, well, this person was having some kind of breakdown or nerve or, a mental illness. Because if you have a breakdown, anybody can have a breakdown or nerve, a mental illness, and they would not act the way they typically do. But if you've never had that before, um, it's unreasonable that one day, at least in science, it's unreasonable that one day when you're middle aged, it will suddenly happen and it will never happen again, right? Then that's not a scientific, objective mental illness or breakdown, right? Because in science, right, science studies mental illnesses and diseases. In science, things are repeatable. We say something is objective and it's factual, it's scientific when it's repeatable, right? Under the same circumstances, you'll see it again. There's a pattern, right? So it won't just happen one day. If it happens one day, it's an outlier, then there are other reasons for it, right? And you just dismiss it. And that's not what you say it is, right? So science, it has to be repeatable. So if somebody is saying that, well, this person has a mental illness, when I was put in a hospital wrongfully, I knew I could tell the mental illnesses that people had without me having to look at their records. So the person who hears voices, who's talking to something, one that's not there, you're not going to see him say it just once. You see him doing it in the morning, in the afternoon, or if you see him doing it today, he's going to do it tomorrow. The person who has paranoid delusions, right? He's always thinking somebody's behind him, wants to hit him. He'll do it again tomorrow. He'll do it next week. He'll do it. You understand? So you see a pattern, right? It's not something that will happen just one time. There are no witnesses, nobody in their family, not their friends, nobody's seen it. It's just a police officer that you don't know who sees it, right? Nobody else, or of an old man who's recanted his testimony. So, uh, let me move on from the definition. So let me quickly give the due process of law definition. Because due process, if the police wants to come to my home and apprehend me, they still need due process of law. I'm still entitled to due process of law. So in this case, they didn't have a warrant. They had a pretextual emergency evaluation petition, which it turns out they didn't have with them. That's what the body cam shows. And the late subsequent discovery, we found it was still in the sheriff's office. So the police came to my home without the emergency evaluation petition. So they had no rights. Under the law, there was no reason for them to be at my home, right? So they're using a pretext that the man who had assaulted me, whom I'd reported to the police, had assaulted me, who can't speak a word of English. Because who was it translating to the police what Germashumi was actually saying? Because they don't mention anybody else. They don't mention his family or anybody else. Germashumi appeared in court in November 2023 because I had filed um, an appeal against him for his fabricating a peace order. The state of Maryland subsequently filed charges against him. They had filed charges against him for assaulting me, right? He can't speak a word of English. He used a translator in court. He can't even understand what you're saying in English. He needs a translator to tell him what's going on in court. Or I don't know if he's pretending, but that's what he's representing to the court, that he can't speak a word of English. He doesn't understand English. But he writes this screed of a peace order saying I um, kidnapped him, assaulted him, and seized his phone and told him I was a cop, and he managed to escape. And he did it under penalty of perjury. So I reported it to the state, to the district court, and they said I needed to come and take an oath, and he would be apprehended. He was charged with a crime, but the state attorney, John McCarthy, he keeps suppressing the charges. And Jide Warire as well was charged. He was charged twice, but he keeps suppressing it because they're supposed to be the witnesses. They're witnesses for the false malicious prosecution that the state brought against me. They're witnesses, so they planted evidence. So the state knows they fabricated evidence, right? If they're using planted evidence, that's fraud on the court. So that's part of malicious prosecution. But today, I want to just focus on the perjury aspect, the oath and affirmations elements within the Fourth Amendment. So um, I'm going to remind us of due process of law within the 14th Amendment. And it says, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. And it continues regarding equal protection, nor shall it deny any person within its jurisdiction of the equal protection of the laws, right? So those are my rights. They're derogable. The state can't take them away from me. Because we are a nation. Under common law, we follow the legal principle of the rule of law. So even judges, everybody's subjected to follow the rules, and cops as well. They can't violate those rules. But we see that with respect to me, I guess because I'm a black guy and I'm a Nigerian, right? Even though I'm an American citizen, my rights, my constitutional rights have been violated. So those rules have been abrogated with respect to the police and the judges and the state attorney's actions towards me, right? I was somebody who was just in my home, and we're finding out all these uh, rules are being violated. When it comes to my rights, my constitutional rights. So I'm going to start with the charge statement, right? The charge statement that we have on record. So the record, again, it's the police officer goes, and that's his name is DeMarcus Coleman, and he writes his charge statement. He goes to a commissioner. He gets it at 7:30. So he applies at 7:30 because when you go to the commissioner, there's a timestamp when they approve it, right? And it's supposed to be quick. So that's long after I was already in custody. That's long. So they had no arrest warrant, no search warrant when they came to my home, right? So that's because if you look at the body cam, it says about 2:21 on May 16. So they were after police officer Jeffrey Ray had already shot me. So that's 2:21. So that was about 5 hours after they had me in custody. So they already removed me about four or so. And prior to that, they had already falsely imprisoned me, because when they locked me inside my home and they blocked my exit, and they used a drone to surveil me at my window, which is confirmed in testimony. I'm going to show how that's confirmed. They already had me under false imprisonment. This probably started before noon, when they started their harassment and the gaslighting. They had no arrest warrant, right? And they showed no notice. So when DeMarcus Coleman goes, he makes these statements, right? And one of the important statements of perjury, important elements of perjury that he committed was he lied. He expressly said, "I threatened to shoot GD Iwariri." So that's a lie right there. Um, Other things he listed in the charge statement, from the body cam, we see that they're not true, right? For instance, when he said they were tasing me, they tased me, and they were actually trying to handcuff me, right? And you see that, like, it describes a struggle. There was never any struggle. So, and in fact, when I was reading that, I was wondering that, hey, has something happened? Because that was not what was in my memory. I still remembered what happened. I'm like, that was not what happened. As I was reading it, and I kept thinking, do they have the wrong person? So he describes a struggle, like that the police are trying to handcuff me, trying to hold me, and I'm resisting, and they're just tasing me right there. Multiple people tased me once. I refuse. I'm on the ground. They're trying to keep me on the ground. I can't. I'm resisting, and they're trying to handcuff me. All of that is a fabrication, right? That never happened. He knows that never happened because there's a body cam. And I remember what happened. They were at a distance from me. There was no touching, right? There was no touching at a distance from me. And they tased me. It happened once. And they were trying to tase me to death. Multiple people tased me. Somebody shot me in the head. I learned that was Jeffrey Ray who shot me in the head, and there's stitches on my head now left that have it's left permanent scarring. So it was some kind of projectile that he shot me with. I understand it was from the taser gun. So um, the representations of DeMarcus Coleman in the charge statements were false, right? That didn't happen. Important. So let me quickly let me enumerate the elements of perjury, right? The elements of perjury are essential elements. It's a false statement that they make a false statement. They're not factual, right? They're not based. They're factually untrue, right? They're factually untrue. False statements that has to exist. And what else? Yeah, I'm trying to show my thumb. False statement, factually untrue. It is material, right? It can influence the outcome, the decision of a judge, right? A judge or jury. So it's material, right? Two, it can influence the outcome of legal proceedings. So materiality, that's two. And it's done upon oath, right? It's done upon oath or affirmations. That's within the Fourth Amendment. They're trying to obtain a warrant, and they're trying to show probable cause. Remember, probable cause that a crime has been committed, right? So that was why they went to the commissioner after they already raided me, removed me, violated Fourth Amendment. It was an illegal search and seizure from my home. So they already had me in custody, but they had me in the hospital, naked in handcuffs, right? I'm naked, completely naked in handcuffs. I'm bloodied. They leave me in the lobby. The females, people looking at me, my naked, prostrate body. And this is something I can see, right, in the evidence as we review evidence, right? See how repugnant the state attorney's office is? They're reviewing these, But anyway, they dehumanized me, violating my constitutional rights. I was in my home. So let me continue anyway. So it has to be under oath or affirmations. An oath, they're swearing to it like in a court proceedings, like when you go to a court and before you start to give your testimony, you're made to swear under oath. You could use a Bible or a Quran, and you're swearing under the penalty of perjury, right? And what's the last thing? Um, let's see, false statements, it's oath, material, and so when we say it's a false statement, it can't be a false statement that you make. It can't be a mistake. Just evasion does not count, or a mistake. It can't be something that, like, okay, you made a false statement because you didn't know, right? So it has to be knowing, right? Knowingly, willful, intentional lies, right? So it's willful, it's intentional. So those are the four elements of perjury, right? Essential elements of perjury. Again, so it's a false statement. It's taken under oath or affirmations, and it's a knowing or willful lying. It's intentional, right? It's done knowingly, willfully, intentionally. And then the fourth element, it's material, right? It has to be material. It's significant enough to be able to influence a judge or jury, right? So when I'm already in custody and DeMarcus Coleman goes to commit perjury, when he's telling the he's letting the commissioner or judge, he got it from a commissioner, the the arrest warrant. He goes to get my arrest warrant after they've already arrested me. They've already taken me, arrested me, removed me from my home, and put me at a hospital, right? I'm bloody. They shot me. I'm injured and I'm naked. They handcuffed me naked. They removed me naked from my home, and he goes to go and get an arrest warrant after he's already arrested me. And then he lies. He said, I threatened to shoot Jide Warrior. And then he's saying, well, this person has an undiagnosed mental disorder. He's not a psychiatrist, but he's saying this person has an undiagnosed thought disorder, right? Because Jide Warrior had lied. I've talked about, I'll deal with the EAP subsequently as well. So he's saying he lies. He said, well, this person is dangerous. He wanted to shoot somebody. He has an undiagnosed thought disorder, right? Um, so he's being deceptive. And then he makes representations like, I didn't live where I was. I was like, this is a dangerous person here. He was involved in an altercation May 14, 2023. So he's being deceptive. He didn't say, I was a victim of an altercation May 14. By the way, well, somebody else filed another false incident report. So let me go back to it. Sergeant Charles Drengwitz, after I called the police, when Jide Wari and my neighbor Germa Shumi first assaulted me at my door, when Jide Wari said he wanted to take me to go and see a psychiatrist, right? He had come, tried to grab me. After I just hung up the phone on him saying I don't want him to come to my home, setting boundaries, to bar him. That's my constitutional right. I never threatened to shoot him at any point. I've never threatened to shoot anybody. I don't own a gun. I'm not a violent person. I've never threatened to shoot Jide Wari or anybody, right? So they assault me, try to remove me. I call the police. My friend's on the phone. My friend talks to Sergeant Charles Drengwitz. But Sergeant Charles Drengwitz goes, I see his report much later on because I filed a prosecutorial misconduct complaint. I saw his report later on. So he fabricated his report. Charles Drengwitz is retired now. He retired shortly after, once I had gone to file complaints that this is what happened once I was released. He lied that, well, I didn't live, he didn't indicate that that was my apartment. They put a false address, completely false. So they made it seem I ran into the building. So apparently there's several homeless people that go into that building. I've seen them. In fact, that was one of the complaints I had, and they let them sleep in the stairwell. So they represented me like I was one of these guys, right? And I ran into the building and I was fighting people and I was stealing people's whatever. So that's the report that they gave. And then he got GDAY to go and file an emergency evaluation petition, right? He suborned perjury. That's just to go and GDAY went and he committed perjury, right? So that's the first, so that's where DeMarcus Coleman gets some of his fabrications from. So the false statement, there are several false statements that he makes, right? Because I have body cam to dispute his version of events. And my attorney has already said, my attorney said in July 2023 that, look, he's looked at the body cam. There's significant distortions, those were his words, from what the charge statement of DeMarcus Coleman says and what's on the body cam. So there was already perjury. The judge should have, he should have dismissed the case, but he didn't because there was fraud on the courts, So because many of these cops, they have this, what's it called, qualified immunity. So they let things go, they let things be. But there's significant distortions and they continue, they're a lot. They're brazen, there's a consistent pattern of lying, right, of mendacity amongst the cops, Montgomery County Police, right, Jide Wariri and all that stuff. So saying I threatened to shoot somebody, they come to my home, that's a false statement. It's factually untrue, but it's also, did he make a mistake? It's willful, it's intentional. The way we know it's willful and intentional is because he saw the emergency evaluation petition. It would have shown him that emergency evaluation petition, and he could see that was not what Jide Wariri wrote. At no time did Jide Wariri say in that charge statement that I was going to shoot him. Maybe he could have told them verbally, because DeMarcus Coleman in the charge statement, he doesn't say the source where he got that. He doesn't specify the source. So maybe somebody else could have told him, I don't know. But what is also factually untrue is the way he said the tasing was conducted. If he was there, he knows it's untrue, right? That was a false statement. It was material because there's a body cam, right? Unless he has a mental illness, he might have delusions, right? Because he was trying to diagnose somebody he doesn't know. So he might be delusional, which makes it even dangerous, right? Cops are amongst the most dangerous people in America, not because they're dealing with dangerous people and they have guns and end up killing them. No, before they go into the force, they don't take the best and the brightest to be cops in America, right? In the counties or wherever they come from. They're very dangerous people. They pick from the bottom of the barrel. I like to watch Forensic Files, right? If you watch Forensic Files or any of these uh, 48 hours, where they solve crime, right? You find a third of the perpetrators, right, are police officers. You see, I just finished watching one, a police officer, several police officers who they kill their spouses, they kill their partners, and they set it up, make it look like their partners committed suicide. It's a very common pattern. Or a police officer who is a patrol person pulls a woman to the side, rapes her, kills her. It's a very common pattern. You see that there's this depravity amongst police officers, amongst cops. They don't pick the best and the brightest, right? And so there's a deficit in integrity and character amongst the police force. So these guys are committing perjury. So that's the first one. So uh, he gets the arrest warrant. So while I'm in the hospital, right, the hospital's trying to hold me. I've already done a video talking about this Dr. Thomas Cochran, who's lying as well. He doesn't tell me that he's reading a police report that's filled with lies, but he's just telling his lies, right? So while I'm in the hospital, while I'm in the hospital at Suburban, right, I'm knocked out because they've drugged me. Well, even though they've drugged me, right, there's will, um, the drug they give you, right, that they knocked me out with. When I got into the ambulance, your eyes might be open, so it's not like an involuntary whatever, but you're not conscious, right? So I'm handcuffed. They dehumanized me, violated my human and civil rights. I'm handcuffed and I'm naked. So they give a false statement, right, to the medical staff that I'm homeless. I have no known relative, even though it was Jide Warire who sent them to my home. And Jide Warire had told them that he's my uncle. But they gave a false police report to the staff, hoping those staff could force medicate me, force treat me, misdiagnose me, and force treat me, right? So they gave false report to the staff at Suburban Hospital saying, I'm homeless, I'm psychotic, and I was attempting to kill the police. Um, I committed five first degree assault, right, upon the police. I wouldn't see this until later on, right, that I was trying to stab people and I threatened to kill people and I'll kill myself and I was threatening to bomb people. So all sorts of lies, right? So I'm not aware of this, right? Nobody tells me. So they hide all of this. So when I'm transferred to MedStar Hospital, which Judge Bonifant is on the board of, he should have recused himself because of that. That's Judge James Bonifant. I've done videos on how Judge Bonifant has a conflict of interest and his judicial misconduct, right? By making uh, giving false incompetence to stand trial orders, right, based on lies he's telling in court. But so they transferred me to MedStar and they want me to stay. So I get what's called somatic treatment because it had been a bandage on my head and I'd been stitched. And so I was in pain from the tasing because five people tased me multiple times. So it stiffened my whole body. It affected my kidneys. My blood pressure was raised. So I had to get treatment for that, accepted somatic treatment. But I refused to speak with a psychiatrist without my family because they were telling lies. So they wanted to hold me. I didn't know why I was there, but they were telling lies. So I had a right to have an administrative judge say, okay, release this guy. He doesn't want to stay because my family wasn't there, right? Under the law, HIPAA laws, I'm entitled to have my family present. My family was in Nigeria, so a kidnapping under law had happened because they were calling Jide Warere my family, and he's not my family. I didn't know what was going on. He had gone to make fabrications on things I never did, on an emergency evaluation petition for which I never received notice. I didn't know, and I didn't have the opportunity to dispute it. So if you have an accusation against you, that's part of the Sixth Amendment, right? And it protects you. And it's also part of the 14th Amendment due process of law. Any accusation, anything that's filed against you in court, you're entitled to receive notice, that's to know, and then to appear. You're entitled to dispute it, right? To give your own portion, your version of what's happened, and bring your own witnesses and question people. And you're entitled to have an impartial tribunal, an impartial judge, right? Those are three elements. I was denied all of these. So the hospital was trying to hold me. So they had an administrative judge, and they did not. My friend wanted to come, Sharon. They didn't let me have my private attorney. They didn't let me have my witnesses. None of that. So I didn't get due process of law. So I'm entitled to have my witness. I was denied that. They just had me somewhere, were telling lies about me, and I was among people I'd never met before, saying they wanted to hold me. I said, no, I want people I know, my family, to be present. You can't just be telling lies, you know, against me. And one of the things they kept saying is, he can't remember anything. He can't, how do you know? How does a doctor I've never met, how does he know what's in my head? How does he know what I can remember and what I can't remember unless I tell him? And I didn't talk to him. I wasn't saying anything. They just said he couldn't remember anything. So um, I insisted on speaking. So they have this crooked doctor. They bring somebody, her name was Ama Ansari. They bring her from, I don't know, they say she's a public defender, somebody I'd never met. She told a lie, right? Attorney misconduct. My friend said she wanted to appear. She talked to me for just 5 minutes because I wanted to have a private attorney. So she said, I still remember her name, Ama Ansari. She was a black Ghanaian woman. And she tried to prevail on me that, look, um, speak with the psychiatrist, take treatment, and you return to your job. So it was my job, the Navy, that had participated in this orchestration to violate my civil rights. And that's illegal, right? That's illegal. Interestingly, Metzler, I would find out that the counsel for the Department of the Navy that I was actually I was in an EEOC proceeding against, um, of the Department of Defense. The counsel, her name is Supraja Murali. Supraja Murali's mother was a physician at the Met Star where I was taken to, right? So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's just one of those coincidental things, but I don't know. But Supraja Murali had asked for a psychiatric evaluation, a medical assessment done on me. And I refused it. In fact, I didn't get an opportunity to speak then, but the judge, the supervisory judge at the time, Maricia Woodrum, she said she would take care of that. So I don't know if she was part of a conspiracy to violate my civil rights, if they orchestrated it together, because it was just bizarre. Eventually, the man who was supposed to have instigated everything, Jide Iwarere, who committed the first perjury on the emergency evaluation petition, he now told me and told my pastor, he said it was the police and the Navy, the government that called him and said I was in a fight with people. I was fighting my neighbors and my co-workers. All a lie, right? So I don't know if uh, I was not in any physical fight with anybody. I didn't physically threaten anybody, but I filed a petition against the building, not against my neighbor, and they were in process. I filed a petition, right? Inspector General complaint and an EEOC complaint, an Officer Special Counsel complaint regarding fraud and misconduct at work, which is my job. I work in a classified area. That's not something Jide Iwarere is supposed to know, right? So I filed those things. Those are legal petitions. Your right to petition is protected by the First Amendment. So if he retaliated to now go and have me locked up in a hospital, which now led to police filing false charges against me, and I got incarcerated wrongfully again, then that's obstruction of justice. So he was a participant in obstructing justice, and he was also a participant in violating, depriving me of my rights. So that's an 18 USC section 241 violation by Jide Iwarere. He's a civilian. So at the hospital, there was another act of perjury when police officer, the guy who shot me in the head, he appears, he takes an oath, so he gives testimony. Now, in his testimony, though, he claims he wasn't the one who shot me with a taser, right? In discovery, we found out that he was the one who actually shot me with a taser to my head. He's the only one who, of the many police officers, about 40 police officers that were supposed to have come out, interestingly, he's the only one who appeared. So I guess he was already constructing his defense for shooting me in the head. But the thing is, under penalty of perjury, he lied. He said he gave a totally fabricated narrative of events. He said he had his Glock in his hand. He was reaching for, he had his Glock in his hand, and each time he wanted to shoot, he said he'd never killed somebody in the force, that he'd spent 20 years or so in the force. But each time he wanted to shoot me, he wanted to kill me. He said it, he didn't say just shoot, he said he wanted to kill me, right? He'd never come, this is the first time he wanted to kill somebody. He said he wanted to kill me. And I was wondering why he was saying that. He said each time he wanted to kill me and pull the trigger, somebody would tase me and he would stop. And he said this happened 5 times. And I'm like, wow. So 5 people tased me, right? Each time, but it turns out he was the first person to tase me. He shot me in the head, so he was lying. And he lied, he committed perjury he lied under oath on the penalty of perjury. So he said he didn't shoot me, that he had his Glock in his hand. He wanted to shoot me in the head, but other people tased me. It turns out from discovery, he was the one who actually shot me in the head with a projectile, right? Not the bullet, not a gun, but he had his taser gun in his hand. So his intent, he manifested his intent. His intent was to kill me. He thought he had his Glock in his hand. He didn't have his Glock. He had a taser gun in his hand, and he shot me in the head. So he aimed for my head. When you're tasing, you're not supposed to aim above the body, shoot above the body. But he shot me in the head, a very important, vital area. And I'm lucky I can still talk. I can still remember things, because that place I was shot in, Broca's area, it controls your analytical reasoning, rational thought. It's your speech and, fluency and things like that, right? Which is interesting, because I'm going to get back in the fabrications of GDAY on the emergency evaluation petition, which I was never given notice, but I got after several months through my attorney. Because GDAY, they had that sealed. They had it sealed. GDAY, where there's a line that you're supposed to indicate that the mental illness a person has, right? Because an emergency evaluation petition is only used for somebody in the state of Maryland. It's only used for somebody who's known to have a mental illness, right? I'm not known to have a mental illness. I don't have a mental illness. Fortunately, Maryland doctors, their psychiatrists, have since declared that I don't have a mental illness, right? And I don't need any treatment. I never received any treatment meant for mental illness. They were just fabrications that started with GDAY. So on the line where he's supposed to indicate the mental illness, he doesn't say any mental illness. He just says hallucinating, irrational thinking, incoherent. So all the things that would happen if you've been shot in the head, if your Broca area has been damaged. So irrational thinking, incoherence, incoherent speech. He said disillusioned with life, delusional thinking. So all of this was a fabrication, right? But interestingly, from shooting someone in the Broca area, that can happen, but God was with me. God protected me. You can hear me talking. At no time when I woke up the next day, I was, I tested everything. My memory, everything was intact. And, there are people around and witnesses, or everybody around. My friends, I talked to my friends the very next day. So I've been fine. And that's the grace of the Almighty God. But Jeffrey Ray, let me go back to Jeffrey Ray's testimony. So he lied, saying he didn't shoot me in the head, but that somebody else shot me in the end. So I was factually untrue, as the body cam, demonstrates. Then the other way he lied was, he said that after I'd been tasered, I got up and started masturbating. So when he's describing this, I was stunned. He said, I got up and started masturbating. And, there's an administrative judge, because they're trying to get the judge to make me stay in the hospital, because I'm saying, no, the hospital has to release me. I've received my somatic treatment. I'm not going to take any psychiatric treatment, So because it was a general hospital, they have all these things, right? So I'm like, but they're saying I should see a psychiatrist. And I'm saying, no, that's not going to happen, right? Without my family, and I'm not going to, So he said after he tased me, after I had been tased, he claimed he tased me. No, he's claimed he didn't tase me, right? He absolved himself, lying, saying he didn't tase me. He said other people tased me, that he had his Glock in his hand and he wanted to shoot me, wanted to kill me. He called me an animal. He used racial epithets. And I was surprised the administrative judge, John Hart, was permitting that, right? So I see how they dehumanize black people and Africans, racists in Maryland. But anyway, he said I got up and started masturbating. So of course, a judge who hears that will say, "Ah, this guy's really crazy." And he was talking about how I was so strong. He was talking about that I was probably under the influence of a drug, that because they tried to keep me down, that they were holding me, that several people couldn't wrestle me down. They were trying to handcuff me. None of that happened. None of that happened. He just told a complete lie, right? I was tased from afar, and there's a body cam that shows it. I've posted the image online, and when I get up, I run into my apartment and lock the door. They released a tear gas bomb. It was a SWAT team that got me out. I didn't resist, and they handcuffed me. Till today, they haven't shown us the body cam of how the SWAT team removed me. I've been requesting that, so they're hiding that body cam. So that was perjury by police officer Jeffrey Ray. It was not true that he didn't tase me. The body cam shows that he tased me, and he should have known that. It's not a mistake on his part. It was not true that I masturbated. The body cam shows I never masturbated. But he lied. After he tased me, I never masturbated. That's not what's on the body cam. It was just a fabrication. It was malicious. So he said it willingly, intentionally. So if a judge hears that, he's going to be like, he'll find it abhorrent, right? He'll be repulsed, and he'll be like, this guy is really an animal, and he's telling the guy that I was an animal. I'm not an animal. So he committed perjury. So the third instance of perjury was, fortunately, the very next day, though, I refused, and the next day or so, 2 days later, because I refused, I said, no, you have a right to challenge it. The judge says, okay, you should stay. So I wrote an appeal eventually. And I said, okay, I used and I call it a loophole. It's my right to have my family present. That's HIPAA. I said, okay, I'm not going to speak with a psychiatrist without my family, without my mother. My family doesn't even know where I am. I'd been kidnapped under color of law. So they were trying to get my mother. For some reason, maybe that made the doctor change his mind. He decided to discharge me, right, and asked me to be there voluntarily. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not volunteering, nothing. Um, so, and then they arrested me, right? So he writes a false report based on what the police had given them, fabricated it. They gave it to the police officers who arrested me. One of them was Sergeant John King. I didn't know there were cops waiting for me. He handcuffed me. First time handcuffs had ever been on my hands. I said, okay. He didn't read me my Miranda rights, right? So that violates my Fifth Amendment due process of law. I asked him that I'd been asking for an attorney for a long time. They didn't give me an attorney, a private attorney. And he said, I'll get all of this at the station. I said, what are my charges? He didn't let me know. So he had me driving over 1 hour because it was a long journey, very uncomfortable. Remember, first of all, I couldn't feel my nerves from the excessive tasing, right? It was the excessive and disproportionate force that the police had used on me in my home on May 16, 2023, without probable cause. Of course, so eventually, at the station, when we get to the station, I was held for over 12 hours in a cold holding, But I got to, I got the charge statement. When I saw it, it was a lie. I've already told you what DeMarcus Coleman wrote, that I threatened to shoot Jide Wariri. I read it. I told Jide Wariri. I called him right there. There was a sergeant standing next to me, put it on the recording on speaker. His name is Sergeant Solomon Ajibade, right? Sergeant Ajibade. Right there, Jide Wariri denied it. He said, no, I never threatened to shoot him, because I never threatened to shoot him. He said, that's a mistake that will be corrected. I never threatened to shoot him. So that was perjury again, right? So in any event, I had a right to have a bond. So at my bond hearing on the 2nd of June, I was prevented. They'll talk, they'll smother your will. They'll just talk you to death. I was trying to ask him for a private attorney. They denied me. I told me to use a public defender. I used a public defender. The public defender said, hey, he's going to get me released on bond because I'd never been arrested before. I was working in the Navy. I had my own apartment. I had a top secret clearance. You have such an excellent background. That was what he was saying. That they're going to release you on bond. But I came to learn because the public defender was a white guy. What a white guy assumes, because of his own experience, is not the same. He can't project it he can't expect it for a black person, right? So you see the disparities in the way judges treat a black defendant and a white defendant. So I had all these qualifications, never been arrested before, no criminal history. I was actually taken from my home, but this judge decides not to give me bond. So after he had, given my record, my background to the judge and asked for me to be released on bond, um, the Surgeon John King, who had arrested me at the hospital, now comes, right? And then he lies. He gives a testimony on oath. So he takes an oath, tells the judge. He said they came to me that I had threatened to shoot Jide Warere. That was a lie. But he doesn't know. That could be mistake. He doesn't know. He's looking at ostensibly looking at his emergency petition, why he's coming. So he said they came and knocked up peacefully. He was saying that he knocked peacefully on my door, came with the emergency evaluation petition, and I opened the door and I had a baseball bat. I swung it at them. I wanted to hit them with a baseball bat and I wanted to stab them with a knife, and that was why they tased me. That was a fabrication. And he said baseball bat. So I'm just hearing these things that never happened, right? Of course, eventually we got to do discovery. Discovery showed that he had lied. There was what John King had described never happened. In fact, he wasn't there. At least he came later on. It was probably part of the SWAT team that removed me, but he didn't come peacefully. I didn't wave any baseball bat. I don't own a baseball bat. It's interesting why he probably watched too much Untouchables, where Al Capone, Robert De Niro, when he plays Al Capone and he's swinging a baseball bat and he actually clubs to death somebody with a baseball bat. I guess that was the image he was trying to project to the judge, and the judge probably thought, oh my God. So the judge goes, well, you're based on the false statements, the fabricated statements, perjured statements by Surgeon John King. The judge goes, well, you're dangerous. He's holding me without bond. It was a she that she's holding me without bond. I think her name was Cock. Judge Cock was, I remember Cock was part of her name. Coke or Cock, like the Koch brothers. So that was another perjured statement, complete fabrication, right? Uh, I didn't have a baseball bat. I never swung a baseball bat at them. None of that existed. Of course, he might not have known that Jide Ware's statement about threatening to shoot him was a fabrication, right? Or he could have known because the police were in a conspiracy with rogue agents of the Department of Defense, Department of Navy to apprehend me. They wanted to kidnap me under color of law and institutionalize me to force a false treatment for a false diagnosis in order to obstruct justice regarding my complaints against the senior executive members of the senior executive service, including Kirsten Risbeck, Jamie A. Simon, not an SES, but they had committed acts of moral turpitude, and I'd reported them, and other people, and Nathan R. Brown, who was committing fraud and misconduct, Nefertari McBride, and of course the Auditor General of the Navy, Donjet Gilmer. She was aware of this. She was part of it because she's not clairvoyant. She'd indicated I could be arrested if I did not quit. So, which is illegal. It was violating my federal civil service rights. I'd reported misconduct. That's my right to petition. I'm trying to make our government better, and I'm saving taxpayers money. Instead, they try to intimidate me and they retaliate, violating Whistleblower Protection Act. But in any event, Surgeon John King committed perjury as well in order to have me for the judge to make a decision not to deny me bond, or for the judge to deny me bond. So he committed perjury in court. Remember again the essential elements of perjury. A false statement, right? Not a mistake, a false statement. It was a false statement that I came and swung a bat at him and the police officers when they came. He didn't come, with an emergency evaluation petition. I was still at the police, at the sheriff's department. So that was a false statement, knowingly. He did it knowingly and intentionally. He wanted to have me denied of, he wanted me to be kept in jail so they could try and coerce treatments. So their psychiatrists could keep trying to coerce treatments. They do that at the Montgomery County Detention Center and Montgomery County Correctional um, Facility at Clarksburg, where 4 people actually died. 4 people died by apparent suicide while I was there, while I was wrongfully detained December, between November 2024 and March 2025. So they have a way of coercing, forcing inmates to take medication. Inmates just awaiting trial. They force treat them, So they have a racket, and Judge James Bonifant is part of this odious and illegal racket that's violating the constitutional rights of Americans, and it impugns on our values, and it disparages, it offends our democracy. So that was there were more acts of perjury, and of course this would so these are the acts of perjury. I've stated them that the police committed. And of course, there are the false reports that the hospital had. They lied that, well, I threatened to bomb people, that I threatened to kill people and kill myself. All a fabrication, right? All a fabrication, and these have been passing through the courts, right? So that's why there's a instance of what's called fraud upon the courts. So when materially falsified, intentionally falsified information has been purveyed through the courts, then it disparages the legal system. It offends, diminishes the integrity of the legal system, and then the case is supposed to actually be nullified, right? You nullify whatever judgment based on the fraud, intentional fraud, and the case should have been dismissed, right? Because it's a violation of my constitutional rights as well, and it's intended to pervert, the course of justice. Who else? So I've talked about how Jide Iwari committed perjury as well. He committed perjury under oath. Gomer Shumi himself committed perjury under oath when he got a peace order when I was when I was being held wrongfully and involuntarily at the hospital at MedStar. I was not allowed to actually go and defend myself in court for the peace order. So, and these are 2 ex parte. They got 2 civilian ex parte orders violating my rights. So you see, these 2 people, individual civilians, were suborned: Jide Iwari and Gomer Shumi. So a neighbor that I'd never spoken with, and Jide Iwari, who misrepresented himself as my uncle. So these were 2 ex parte orders from 2 people who were suborned to commit perjury. Subornation of perjury, that means somebody who is an officer, right? They have influence in the court, an officer or representative of the law enforcement person. They force somebody, they induce somebody, right, using the authority to commit perjury, right? So that's what's called subornation of perjury. So Gomer Shumi, Jide Iwari were suborned to commit perjury in violation of the 4th Amendment, right? So, and of course, while I was detained, Jide Iwari now hired an attorney his name is, so I'll do another video to keep it short, and I'll discuss the medical perjuries as well, the medical falsification of records. But Jide Iwari hired an attorney named Steve Mercer, right? Mercer and McQueen, they've changed their name. But Steve Mercer was now making false representations in court. He told the judge that I was delusional, I didn't know what was going on. And so the judge didn't let me talk. So he told the judge not to let me talk in court. So the judge didn't let me talk. The judge, James Bonifant, would just be asking, he would just be abusive. He would make disparaging comments, statements. Why don't you want to take your medication? Well, so he was the one who ordered 2 false incompetency orders, right? Declaring me incompetent falsely twice, using fraud on the court because of the fabrications of this Steve Mercer. At one time, Steve Mercer lied in court saying I had just told him I want to be taken to a hospital immediately and them inject me with antipsychotics. All a fabrication. So he was making misrepresentations. And then the judge ordered for me to be released, right? And so I would go voluntarily, and I refused, right? And so that was why he was locking me up, right? After that, he locked me up. He has a right as a judge during my pretrial term, prior to my trial, to say, well, he can deny me bond if he thinks, well, I'm a flight risk or a danger to community, but he cannot coerce me to go and get treatment. That's my constitutional right within my zone of privacy rights. And I denied, I'd refused. I said I wasn't going to go and speak with a psychiatrist. That's within my constitutional rights. It's protected in my First Amendment as well, right? My freedom of religion. My belief, by the way, we don't believe in psychiatry. My religious belief, we don't believe in psychiatry. And, well, some people need it. It's not absolute. If I had a mental illness, I would probably, but I have my faith, I have my religion. So the fact that I don't accept it, absolutely, right? If maybe there are people who need it, let me put it that way. People who need psychiatry, that's their own. Just as people are free to practice their own religion, I'm also free to exercise mine. My religion, absolutely, I don't believe in psychiatry, right? Even if there was something wrong, I would not accept it. But the thing is, I stay with facts, not counterfactual. So the fact is, I don't have a mental illness. I have no need for a psychiatrist, and my religion does not permit the use of psychiatry. It doesn't accept it, right? And so Judge Bonifant continued to violate my rights. And fortunately, though, I mean, there's state psychiatrists that he forced me to do an evaluation through. They told the judge that I had no mental illness and I did not need any treatment. And so that matter has been put to bed. But there's still violations nonetheless. Well, so I've discussed the portion of the Fourth Amendment that deals with oaths and then affirmations and warrants. And I've shown how Montgomery County police officers, through false oaths, committing perjury, obtained warrants against me after they already had me in custody. And Jide Ware also used a false oath, committed perjury to get an emergency evaluation petition. Grandma Shumi, a neighbor who had assaulted me, also committed perjury also to get an ex parte peace order. Jide Ware's emergency evaluation petition also was an ex parte peace emergency evaluation petition. Ex parte means only one party is speaking with the judge. One party got a decision in court without the opposing party present, right? So, and that actually impugns on the integrity of our court process, right? It's a violation of court proceedings. So these have been illegal ex parte police proceedings. Let me remind us of our Fourth Amendment. Maybe you can memorize it too. The right of the people to be free, to be free, it means the same thing, right? But the right, so, and you can learn to paraphrase it, but I like the language that James Madison used, and that's why I like to say it in the original way. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and persons or things to be seized. Let me say it again. Let's try for a clean way, a smoother version. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So that's the Fourth Amendment. Today, we focused on probable cause warrants and oaths of affirmations. And when they're violated, it's perjury. And perjury has four elements: false statements, making false statements knowingly or intentionally, right? And it's material, and it's material. And what's the last one again? It's material. No, so it's a false statement, knowingly false statement, intentional. It's material, and what's the last element of perjury? Oh, I'm getting there. Okay. Before I say that, before I state what the last, and I've said it in the video, it's a false statement. It's knowingly false. It's material. Um, hmm. I'll write it down in the. I said it earlier, but I don't know why I've forgotten it. But anyway, and let me talk about the 14th Amendment. Let me just recite the 14th Amendment, the important part of the important clause that deal with this particular case. That's the due process of law and equal protection of the law. So it says, um, the state, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, and property without due process of the law, nor shall it deny any person within its jurisdiction of the equal protection of the laws. So again, let me revisit the perjury, the four elements of perjury. Yeah. The memory. Okay, was it the shot to the head that's affected my memory? I used to be as a kid, people used to say I had a photographic memory. I was known for having an excellent memory anyway. I think many people from the area I come from have that kind of memory. But so false statements, knowingly or willfully, it's intentional, it's material, it's false, it's knowing. And then what's the last element of perjury? I'd said it before. How did I forget? So you see, severe injury caused by shooting in the head, right? By Jeffrey Ray, by the Montgomery County Police brutality. Somebody, and that was my prize, my memory. I used to be so. My classmates, when I was a kid, they used to be so envious of my memory, right? And I'd be shot there. So anyway, so it's knowingly, it's false, it's material, and what's the last? So you see, these are the results of being brutalized by Montgomery County Police Department, Jeffrey Ray, and others. And to add insult to injury, John McCarthy, state attorney, then charged me with a crime, and the Judge Bonifant locked me up you know, incarcerated me for an aggregate of 15 months wrongfully. And I was a victim just in my home. Okay, so let me see, what is it? It's knowing perjury, penalty of perjury. Perjury, it's a false statement. It's material, knowing. Um, well, I can't remember the fourth element, so I'm going to write it down. I'd said it earlier in the video. It's funny, but one of those things. And I guess I'm learning a lot more about the memory, right? My memory, how it works. So why is it that something that I could remember earlier and I was saying what it was, why have I suddenly forgotten it? It's knowing. It's a false statement. It's material. It's the last element. It's false. Well, let me not make this thing longer than it should be, and I will check it out. I will try and remember it, and I'll write it down in the notes. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I like talking about American presidents. Today I talked about the Fourth Amendment and perjury, which is within the Fourth Amendment concerning oaths and affirmations. President James Madison, our fourth president, gave us the Bill of Rights, which incorporates the Fourth Amendment. And I've been talking about today, I was also applying it to wrongful arrest by Montgomery County Police and acts of perjury and subornation of perjury and fraud on the courts committed by police officers, Sergeant Charles Drengwitz, he's retired now, Heng Chin Chen, a Demarcus Coleman, and Jeffrey Ray, and of course the malicious prosecution by State Attorney John McCarthy, and judicial misconduct with fraud on the court by Judge James Bonifant of Montgomery County. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.